Hey everyone, welcome to the H4H kind of Manna edition of the news that we just released about the Manna 2.0. I am grateful to have a few members of the board here with Adam Stollard, Philip Silva, and John Fretchen here. So we had some wonderful questions and it seems like there's still a very engaged community on the direction that we foresee the next steps as this project evolves. There's a few points that I would love to address that we had to consider as last year was a transformative year in many dynamics with COVID and then different personal challenges that our team had to endure along with other people's challenges. Um, Essentially what we had to evaluate was how, what do we do with Manna, right? And so there were three scenarios on the table. One, that it would die, like that was very likely actually there for a while last year. Number two was start from scratch. And then three is the scenario that we presented just recently. And we feel there's so much value that they're in the community that can roll over and continue pushing this project forward. And then some circumstances worked out to where we could keep things moving in the right direction from the nonprofit and Manna's perspective. So that was the decision we made. And it was not an easy decision, but for what we're trying to accomplish and where we see this going, it was the right decision to pursue this. So would love to, if there's any other high level discussion points that anyone wanted to bring up before we dive into some of the questions, would love to offer it to any of you three. All right, so we'll dive into the first question here. This question was three questions in one, so we broke it up into three different questions here. So is there a TLDR for non-blockchain enthusiasts who just want to see this project succeed? John, you want to take that one?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And for those who don't know what TLDR means, kind of it's too long, don't read. And one of the things that's still really rampant within all of these blockchain and fintech and kind of future tech projects is they're really complex. They're complex and they're difficult for an average person to understand. So this is like a big part of really what we're trying to achieve with Manna 2.0 is simplifying things. And the objective is to get to a point where you don't have to have this tremendous understanding of blockchain tech and all of these various tools and secondary knowledge just to use something like Manna. And so really our objective here is to move to a point where everyday people and can utilize Manna, can understand it without feeling like it's so complicated. And I know that still at this stage feels complicated and aspects of it are, but just know that really our focus and our direction really is towards simplification in every way.
Cool. And here's the second part of it, and I'm going to pass this to Phil because I think he has a really great perspective on this. Is if this is supposed to be for everyone, what steps do we have to take to educate casual users with the conversion, and what steps need to be taken to participate? How do we make this as easy as getting rewards on Coinbase for watching videos? And if you don't mind that, or Phil, talking about the logic of the one a day too, on why that's such a critical point from our point of view.
Yeah, I mean, the one a day is kind of the simple thing that I think is most important. There needs to be a clear meme, a clear message that people can understand. How much is a Manna worth? And we thought it was important to have that be really clear. And the simplest thing we could think of was one a day. Brandon's written a bunch about sort of the power and universality of that. So from a monetary standpoint, we don't know what it's going to be. It's free floating. The community is going to value it how they're going to value it. But from a logic standpoint, the idea is every person can get one every day. That's how many there are. Yes, the supply will grow, but it will grow by the size of the community,
Mm-hmm.
faster. So that's that part. In terms of making it easy, that's going to be tricky. This stuff is still hard. There will be steps to go through. We're going to try to make it so it's not too bad. We're going to talk a bunch more about Bright ID and how that works, but people will need to go through that process to prove that they are one person, because everyone's supposed to get their one. The conversion from Manna 1.0 to 2, for those people that were in it before, that will end up being a fairly simple process. You're going to log into your old Manabase account, and you're going to be able, with your validated Bright ID, and you'll be able to claim your new tokens on ID Chain. We'll get into all that more. So
Cool. Yeah. And then this one is really, I think, an intriguing point. And I think we tried to start it too prematurely, is how do we make this accessible to unbanked communities, which are likely to benefit the most from a basic income program? Adam, do you mind kind of breaking down from the Bright ID point of view? Because I know the saturation point we're aiming with Bright ID is the billions, right? So can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so part of the move to ID Chain is because when Manna was first set up and was on its own blockchain, you know, Ethereum was brand new and maybe didn't even exist, and so that wasn't really an option for Grant Coin at the time. There was no Ethereum for them to launch on. And since then, there's been a whole bunch of innovations in what you can do with a token, and there were just a lot of reasons to be on a new blockchain. And so I think as far as making it accessible, to be able to use the tools that make something accessible, we need a new platform, and we need a platform that comes with all the with all the new technology that's coming out, that comes with all the new breakthroughs. We chose ID Chain because the way it works, unlike other blockchains, it's very simple to just use from within a browser. You don't have to even know that you're using a blockchain. There's a couple other solutions like this, but the nice thing about ID Chain is that it has a mission to make sure that it always stays open to the general public. So if any of you follow other blockchains like Bitcoin and Ethereum, you'll notice that they've become very expensive for regular users. And a project like Manna that wants to reach millions of people, it can't happen on an expensive blockchain. It needs another solution. But with ID Chain, what you get is the same technology as Ethereum. Everything that Ethereum benefits from, ID Chain can benefit from. Uses the same technology, but in a way that is going to be always accessible for people of any income level. It's never going to just become a playground for the rich. There'll be lots of applications built on top of it that are easy and free to use with the free gas tokens you get. So the network access is free. Like we were talking about, you don't even need to know that you're using the blockchain. So it's perfect for something like Manna that wants to be on the blockchain, that wants to have the access to that nice technology without having any sort of large expense for its users.
Yeah.
So that was the choice for ID chain. That was how to make it accessible. And we've been thinking a lot at H4H. I mean, our main mission at Hedge for Humanity is how can we get value to every person in the world? And that's a technical challenge. So primarily, we're working on this technical challenge, which is if someone wanted to send $1 to everybody on the planet, how would you technically do that? And so Bright ID is a part of that as a way to uniquely identify yourself without giving away much personal information. And then the other part of the solution is how do you do the transfers of money? And blockchain has opened a lot of doors, and Bitcoin was the first, but right now, if you're sending Bitcoin or Ethereum tokens to someone, you're going to be paying $50 a pop to do that. So that doesn't work for
It's not
Manna. So
feasible.
we
Yep.
needed something that uses the same technology, so it's always on the forefront, but is always going to be cheap and accessible for everybody. That's the ID chain mission, is to make it accessible for all time. So
Yep. Yeah, whomever posted that question, this is essentially what we've been banging our heads about how to make this possible. And we're trying our best to push it forward. So yeah, well, let's move on here. Hello, H4H. I've been following since the days of Grant Coin and remember the migration from Akata to Manabase. What do those of us with Manna 1.0 need to do to claim 2.0? So we got a way OG here. Wow, from the Akata migration. So you know the challenges with that whole dynamic there. So yeah, how the current setup right now is the email associated to Manabase would just be you pop that in there, you get a 6-digit code, and then that's your code to like redeem to the balance that was associated to that email. The other prequel though, you have to get the Bright ID and set up the ID chain. So those are pretty slick now. I recently did that process and it's pretty slick at this point. So highly recommend download Bright ID, get on a verification party. We'll probably have some H4H little verification parties, but currently Bright ID main has their own times and setups, but so I highly suggest jumping into one of those. So that's step one. Does anyone want to add on to that?
Just for the step two, there will be clear instructions on what to do.
Yeah.
And it should be a other than getting Bright ID verified, the process should just be minutes of activity.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You won't know that you're using a blockchain. You'll get that extra security of using a blockchain without having to know that it should just be as easy as any application that you're used to.
Yeah. The people that hold private keys and stuff, that'll be a little bit more intuitive. But for the majority of Manabase users, like it should be pretty straightforward.
Right. And so one of the this may be jumping ahead a little bit, but one of the nice things about Bright ID is so with blockchain, even though we try to hide the fact that we're using it from users so they don't have to deal with that complexity, there's still this notion of keys that are unlocking your account, and you in most cases you're the one that has to figure out how to manage those, and that can be really tricky. So there's some solutions where they'll take a centralized approach and say, okay, we'll manage your keys for you. So if you've ever used an exchange to buy cryptocurrencies, you've seen that, okay, they're managing your keys for you. So you can just use the email and password that you're used to. So one of the nice things about Bright ID is that it can manage keys for you in a way that uses the people you know. So what you'll learn when you start using Bright ID is that it's not a centralized solution. It uses the people you know to get you verified. It also uses the people you know to manage your keys. So if I lose my keys and I've set up Philip, Brandon, and John as my, best friends, recovery connections, the people that I trust with my keys, then all I have to do is reconnect with with two of them on Bright ID, and I get everything back. So that's called social recovery, and it's the best way to manage keys. It's a really great way. Vitalik from Ethereum recommends it as the best way. We know it to be the best way, and that's an added benefit you get from using Bright ID. So you'll notice that it's much better than KYC for verification.
Oh yeah.
And you'll notice that you automatically get this nice way to recover, that you could if you lose everything, you lose access to your all your devices or something, you can still get back into your Manna account by using the social recovery, by just starting up on a new device and having your friends connect to you. So when you get on Bright ID, make sure you set up that social recovery. It's very important.
And I want to just say a few things on that point. Is like we've gotten criticized of like, why didn't Manna succeed with the current? It's like there were so many holes in the process that were just like flooding, just not working, right? The tokenomics, the centralization, the custodian versus non-custodian. And then the granddaddy of them all is unique identity, right? Like that problem is not solved. So if that problem was solved, like it would be much more viable. So I think this is still an underappreciated, undervalued solution on trying to make this occur, is that this doesn't exist. So I just want to point out that, and why I think of that is like the customer service support tickets and everything were just, but for a little startup that's like volunteer time, like we were getting bombarded by that support. So
yeah, that's a really good point, Brandon. So that's another thing that Bright ID brings to the table, is we bring our entire support staff. So it's no longer just the small Manna team that has to deal with people losing access to their account or whatever the issue might be. If the accounts are being set up through Bright ID, then and there's you have a problem there, we've got a really great support team that's always there to help. So that's that's a huge benefit, I think.
Cool. Yeah, we'll try to be under an hour here. So let's start, keep cranking through. Number 5, how open source decentralized will Manna 2.0 be? Who wants to take that one? How about Phil? What would be your vision on like that vision coming to life, I guess, is more so.
Yeah, it certainly will come over time. I imagine all of the code will be entirely open source, as it should be, and as is true with Bright ID. In terms of decentralization, that will come from the community, and I expect that it will be somewhat sort of progressive, and that it'll start off with some centralization, but none of us want to be in charge of this thing long term, especially if it grows. So as the community is ready to step up and take control, we've learned a tremendous amount about DAOs and the power of the hive mind to accomplish things. So we would love to make this entirely controlled by the community, and we'll figure out over time the best way to do that.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that too. In the first iteration of Manna, a lot of the vast majority of the development resources and work that was put into it was towards Manabase, which at the time was all closed source code, and this is something like, just from so many aspects of the first iteration of Manna, really we're heavily reliant on a central kind of database, centralized influences, and it didn't allow for decentralization. It didn't allow for really proper open sourcing, and then thus it doesn't really allow for like a truly community driven project. So it's like a really big change to go from kind of the way the first Manna was set up to really make something that is, and as Phil mentioned, it takes time, because you can't have something really truly decentralized until you have a lot of participants from around the world contributing and helping create it. But what we're putting out there is the seed to have that, and the foundation that's to breed that to life. So that's the objective and the goal, and much more achievable now with this infrastructure and this setup.
Yeah. Cool. Alrighty. Moving on. When will the Manna 2.0 claim, blockchain, and distributions go live? We'll have more details to come. Still locking down some dates from one of the devs on when he can start contributing back to all this. So we'll have more details on that to come. So here we go. Will Manna 2.0 be listed on exchanges? A quick response on that front is we were on like one South exchange, or it is on one, and I think Frey Exchange too, which are very small exchanges, which we're very grateful for them to have Manna. The cool functionality of as Adam was describing, of like tapping into the EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine infrastructure and tool sets, is the on-chain like automated market making and liquidity pools. So I would foresee a lot of exchange happening on-chain, but there might be an exchange that wants to list it on a centralized exchange, but that's up to them. So does anyone want to add anything further on that front? I'm still learning all of these different things, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah, so there's been a huge movement in the past few years to be able to exchange tokens in this decentralized way, where there is no company that's managing your account for you. You just simply show up to one of these automated decentralized exchanges with your token. You say, I want to exchange this token for this token. And as long as there's the liquidity there, which basically means someone putting up money on both sides, it just happens automatically with no central control. You don't need a Coinbase or something like that to make it happen. So this is great news for projects like Manna. It means that as long as there's enough interest in Manna that people, just regular people, are putting up Manna plus something else, some other token, then the exchanges will happen. So this is great new technology that we've been seeing, and yeah, that's what you get from being on an Ethereum enabled blockchain. So that's going to be really nice for us.
And I would just also say that I don't imagine that we're going to be pushing hard to get on centralized exchanges. We're certainly not going to be paying exchange listing fees. But the exchanges are watching what's happening on the automated market makers. So if the token has meaningful exchange volume on the AMAs, then people then centralized exchanges add it on their own.
Yep, cool. Alrighty, so number 8 here. So early adopters will get more money early on, but in the end it will almost be a normalized amount for everyone. I find the whole post too confusing. Yeah, so that's been something that was, I think the most comments that we've gotten were from the root reduction. I think that's the biggest like talking point that a lot of people have had. The 1 a day, actually, people agree with that. Like I haven't heard any criticism on that, actually. So the root reduction was, so as we analyzed this, it was like, how do you dilute, or that might not be the right term, but if you're going to that 1 a day and want those new users to have that equal access to, like, how do you accomplish that with the current setup, because the pre-mine, just the founders had a huge chunk that was just not it was not viable. Like it just wasn't right. And then the different evaluations as people donated, and the tokenomics of the UBI with the percentage and the referrals, it just got too much out there, and there wasn't a healthy market behind it. And the theory was to have like the nonprofit back the value, right? And we did that, and I think the thesis still is true to be viable, but you have to have a pretty large amount of capital to have a floor price on something like Manna. Um, so as we evaluated that, we were banging our heads against like what would be the right like decision to make. And the root reduction made a lot of sense. Is like, so the people with the low balances didn't get impacted as great as the people with the large holdings. And I want to reiterate this point, like the the founders are the hit the hardest, right? Like we're getting creamed on this. And but that's the thing, is like we're not in this to get rich or wealthy. You know, we want to see something like this exist in the world. And if we made the wrong decisions, if that was the thing for just to get wealthy. Like the best decision that I should have made was not to try this project. It's like just sit on my Bitcoin, or I think John put Ethereum back in the day to help kind of kick this thing off. So we obviously made the wrong decision if that was our goal, which obviously it's not.
Brandon, I would say, with the idea of this one a day, if you imagine that, so people get 365 in a year. If you live to be 100 years old, in a whole lifetime, you'd get 36,500 of these in a whole lifetime. And if that is the story that we're trying to tell the world, and I think that's potentially a powerful story. If some people start off with millions of them, like you have many, 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 many lifetimes worth of wealth, that doesn't fit the ethos of the message that we're saying. And I'm a Manna 1 holder, and I have, and if those just moved over, it'd be lifetime, but it's also worth nothing. Like Manna currently today, doesn't have any monetary value. It's on an exchange for tiny fractions of a penny. So with this, we're hoping that we can create something that actually does have value. But the old thing that existed, if you've got people with endless lifetimes worth of wealth in this currency, we don't think it can work.
Yeah, exactly. It started falling apart quite quickly, and the data is there. It just it didn't work. And like with the people are saying, like from a percentage based, if you run the math out from like, if you held a million and you get the root reduction to 10,000 and you get it for 5 years, if you compare that to the 10, if back in the day we had 10 billion and the goal was to get the currency out as widely as possible and quickly. And so to get to that 10 billion threshold with this new economic like theory is going to take the users and time. Those are the only two variables to start forecasting that. So yeah, it's all comparable and relative. So and I would love to see some community members like chart some of this forecast out. We could certainly do it ourselves, but I know there's very intelligent community members in here, because it's quite intriguing. And depending on what coin you live on with the what's population forecast going to happen, it gets really interesting. And I think some really good discussions can occur on that front. So, and then the other point too, that I think is very subtle that no one picked up on, but child savings program, right? Like that was one project I loved, and I really was bummed we couldn't pull it off. But isn't Bright ID actually having family members of children getting verified on there? It doesn't care. So um, theoretically, if they opt in and get verified to Manna, like the children will actually be starting to receive these distributions. So no one picked up on that, which I thought was surprising. But yeah, that's subtly that vision seems like it could come to life. So I'm quite excited about that. It's not its own program or anything. It's just encapsulating into the UBI logic. So alrighty. So yeah, let's discuss here on like what's the old blockchain? Like what here, this is a pretty long question, and essentially it boils down to what is old Manna blockchain, what's happening there, and how to access all that. So from my point of view, like we've been covering the cost of the miner here in a colo, and the servers associated to it, the servers running the wallet.dat files and the actual functionality of the wallets, that's been all turned off. Just the cost of it was way too high. So we anticipate keeping that infrastructure going until the migration goes down, and then I think we should have where people could pull and extract that out from Manabase. So we still need to figure out what that steps are and come to a conclusion on what that looks like. But with this open technology, like there's some community members that if they want to keep this project going, like it's all like forks occur in this like ecosystem all the time. So John, did you have anything or anyone else want to kind of, I know we had some discussions on this front that I think there were valuable input from a few others that I would like for you guys to add, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'll make a few points there. Kind of reiterating what you'd said, the Manna 1.0 still exists. Those who are interested in continuing to hold it or trade it will have that ability to do so. And I know the Manabase Manna isn't currently available. We'll look at ways to make that available if people would like it. You know, from an H4H perspective, our real objective here is making Manna 2.0 work. That being said, we've already had one community member in particular reach out about kind of doing some work on the original Manna blockchain and keeping it going as like maybe a slightly different project. So, you know, we'll see how it works. And if there are people who really fundamentally prefer the old economics and the old logic, then by all means, I think it's possible that can be continued. Certainly we would support that, though our energy and resources, you know, will be focused more so on making Manna 2.0 work.
And I would say we wouldn't stop anyone from doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
H4H, we will announce it ahead of time, but we're going to stop mining the old Manna chain at some point, and I don't think anyone else is currently mining it. So someone else would need to step up and do that. Great, please do.
Yeah.
But with appropriate notice, we do intend to stop our active support of it. And if the community wants to do something with it, great, awesome. I hope they do, but it's not going to be us.
Yeah, and I think that goes on to the bigger point of H4H is that we will help facilitate the technology that is best to help try to push our mission forward, and we will evolve and adjust accordingly as the ecosystem changes and the landscape changes. So yeah, like that's how we'll derive our decisions moving forward. So
it's also worth noting just that, so when we move to ID chain, H4H is no longer responsible for running the blockchain. It is a small but decentralized group that is growing of nodes that support that. And that's the idea. There shouldn't be one organization that if they stopped supporting something, that it would cease. If the Bitcoin Foundation stopped running Bitcoin, who cares? There's thousands of other people running the Bitcoin blockchain. No one would even notice any particular miner turning off. With Manna, if we turn off our miner, the system goes down because no one else is doing it. And that will not be a problem with ID chain, because maybe H4H will become one of the nodes on the network. That would be great. We should certainly consider doing that. But it would just be one of many, one of a growing number.
Yep. Cool. How will the root reduction apply to coins I bought in Manna? So the root reduction is to all circulating supply to each user. So yeah, it applies to all coins that are in existence here, except for the ones that are in reserve. Those will not cross over from the nonprofit. Are the old Manna 1.0 tokens going to be transferred, converted to the new Manna? So it's a claiming process. So like we said previously, that the old chain can be spun up, so anyone can hop in and mine it. But this is a new asset that is being claimed onto ID chain. And so the goals on this process is like, we got scammed. Like there were so many Sybils on this thing, and so Bright ID will facilitate and flesh out a lot of users that were just attacking the system. So I think that's being underappreciated, because that was detrimental to not only the tokenomics, but just the burdensome that the organization had to undertake. Like it's pretty aggressive. If you've never seen a Sybil from the inside occur, it's pretty gnarly. And I would love for that actually to be a discussion Bright ID does in one of their AMAs, is maybe have that Kevin, because it seemed like they got pretty nasty hit on the Gitcoin. But I think from an outsider looking in, it's like, what's going on? But like inside, seeing what's happening, it's pretty wild for sure. So will we be able to account for Manna owned across multiple wallets, such as on the Manabase website and South Exchange? Yeah, so that's we still got to work that out. The trickiest dynamic that will be a handful of people is someone with Manabase, a QT wallet, and coins on South Exchange. So we just have to create that process.
Yeah, there will be a mechanism, because sort of they're all linked under your Bright ID. So there will be a mechanism that you'll be able to send their coins, and they'll all be treated as if you were one person.
One person, yeah. Yep.
But for the vast majority of users, they've only got their coins in one place. So
yeah,
we'll be there to provide support to the people that have them in other places.
Yeah. Yep. This is a great question. I think both Phil and Adam should hit this one. What kind of verification will be required? I see on the Bright ID there are varying levels of verification. Here's my issue, and likely a catch-22 for Manna. I understand the need for some sort of verification, but I also have no interest in trading away personal information for little to no value. This person did their homework. With the verification, they saw the different levels, but I would love for you guys to expand on this a little bit. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, definitely. So the really great thing about Bright ID is that you don't have to share any personal information. It uses the people that already know you. When you make a connection on Bright ID, you're connecting with the people that you already know in real life, and they're the people that are verifying you. You do need to make connections, and but you don't need to share anything other than with the people that you already know. So you're sharing your name and photo peer-to-peer, not with a centralized server. It's not like Facebook. It's just there to help you get verified as a unique human, and you use your friends and family to do that. So yes, we have a way to bootstrap that, which is Bright ID connection parties, but primarily the system that we want to use is connecting to your existing social connections. So yeah, good news is you don't have to share any information.
Yeah. Yep. And we were, go ahead, Phil.
We talked about varying levels of verification. So Bright ID, the way it works is, it's one social graph that sort of all the nodes agree is the connection pattern. But how to read that for Sybil resistance can be done in a variety of ways. How much Sybil resistance do you want to have versus how hard it is to get that verification? And there are multiple levels. So Manna will choose where it wants to start in that process and can change over time as we see how the community is responding. So it's a balancing act between how easy do you want to make it for the real people to get in versus how hard do you want to make it to keep the Sybils out. And there's this everything in between. The easiest version that a lot of applications are using now is very simple. You show up to a party, you're going to get verified. The hardest one that runs now, only 2 people in the entire system have the verification. And you can pick anywhere in between super easy to ridiculously and stupidly hard. And that'll be a thing that happens over time as the community grows. It's also, when the community is bigger, it's easier to bring the real people in. When there's 100,000 people, it's not that hard to find somebody that's already in it. When there's 10,000 people right now, maybe you don't know anyone on Bright ID that can mark you as a trusted connection. So that will evolve over time. We'll be public about what we're doing and why we're doing it. But that's
yeah, and that's a great point on like one of the core ethos of Bright ID and why it's so compelling is that it doesn't need much data, if any data at all. It just is a connection. And going through what we were trying to prevent these Sybils and these multiple accounts was like the collection of data is unbelievable, and that's why we had to stop. It's like, no, we do not want that. But when you host your domains and all that, like, you can collect a lot of data from your users, and that's scary. And that was part of what I learned in this process of this data harvesting internet that we live in. So this gets into the very, very core issues that are going on and how we interact with the internet currently. And yeah, like the Web 2 and Web 3, you'll hear that kind of those two differentiating like terms thrown
Yeah.
around. So
Privacy first, you control your data. I think those are probably the most important parts of Web 3.
Yep. And what your data is interacting with and how it's monetized exactly.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's no central server that's got all your data. It's you sharing with the people that you choose.
Yep.
And that's how the verification system works.
Yeah. So this is getting very deep into the core of like, these are fundamentals that need to change into how we interact with internet. So how do I verify my identity in Bright ID? Go ahead.
Yeah, let's do a demo. I was hoping to like screencast this from my phone, but I can also just hold up my phone and we can show how that works. So we can actually, do you have it too, Brandon? Okay, we've all got it. Great. So this is going to be fun. We're just going to do a group connection. So I'm going to hit my code right here.
Okay.
And then, so I'm going to flip it so that it's a group connection so that all 3 of us can connect. And then I'm going to just hold that up. So you guys go ahead and scan me. Scan that. It works over video. It works in person. Once you, here, let me get
I'll say already know, not suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Oh,
got it.
so do
And
you want
so
to?
from the other perspective, so
Okay, right.
I've scanned Adam's code, and now I can see him, and I can see how many connections he has, and mutual connections,
Yep.
and I
Yep,
can
this is
connect with Adam.
There's Brandon. And so I get to pick the level. And this is just between me and Brandon. This is not going to a server somewhere. And I say, okay, well, I had known Brandon for a while. I already know him. And reconnect with Philip. And so this is, yep, this is good. So now we just made our connections, and now we wait for a little while, and the connections go through pretty much immediately. But what will happen is you'll see right here, verified for 18 apps. If I go into my apps, I can scroll through, and I believe Manna is going to be here. Yep. So there you go, down at the bottom.
there it is.
We can see that I'm verified for Manna now. So it's a very simple process. It uses your existing friends and family. In the case, like Philip was saying, where it's getting the graph of people is getting bootstrapped, you can come to a connection party and get some basic levels, verification level, just by connecting with the other Bright ID users that you find there, the other Manna users. So we'll probably have some Manna socialization, like ways to meet other Manna users. I'm sure the community already is pretty tight in some places, so that's good. And you can use people that you already know that are using Manna to help you get verified. And ideally, this is something that you'll want to bring your family and friends into. So as you do that, that'll help them get verified too.
Yeah, let's roll into this, because this is in the 3-month roadmap of Bright ID. Will there be will there be a process for Manna 1 holders who do not own a smartphone and therefore can't use Bright ID to claim their Manna 2.0? The elderly and the poor are two demographics that are less likely to have a smartphone. Can you expand on the web app that is on the roadmap?
Yeah, so we're building out a web app so that you can move Bright ID to multiple devices and back it up as a. We already mentioned the social recovery backup, which is the best, most secure method. But there's another pretty good method for backing up your Bright ID, which will be coming out this year, which is backing it up to other devices. And those devices could be anything, a tablet, laptop, whatever. So you will eventually be able to use Bright ID on other devices, and you can share. There's no problem with sharing a device with someone else for Bright ID. So you can think about, if a family has access to a computer, they can use that, or it could be a community computer. But there does have to be some sort of internet connection to make it work. I think that goes without saying with Manna. It's because it's blockchain, you got to somehow get to those blockchain servers. So when we're talking about getting into rural communities, I imagine that it probably starts out with some central hub where there's a community internet connection and some computers there, and that's how people can come and get their Manna. And so Bright ID wants to be something that can support that type of environment where you can come and log into your computer, log into your Bright ID account on that computer, and then make connections from there. So yeah, we want to be as flexible as possible. There's some great initiatives about bringing mesh networks to remote locations, and so that will be, I hope that will be a core part of this, that Bright ID and Manna are part of a package of providing new financial options to people in rural areas and poor areas, and that it includes everything, that it's just part of a complete package. It includes internet access, access to electricity, and then access to these important applications that allow people to use money and grow their business and exchange with each other, and exchange with other communities. So we're hoping, yeah, we're hoping that to bring that to the world. I mean, that's our mission. So we start out with people that already have internet connections, and then we get to the point where we're part of that internet package that goes out into those locations.
Cool. Yeah, that's exciting. Alrighty. Where are we at here? Will Manna 2.0 have an ambassador program? That's going to be up to the DAO and the community to establish what those look like. That'd be great. We tried a little bit of that. There's some bottlenecks occurs with those different programs, but Bright ID has these Bright ID stars that they've had some really good people come to the table. So yeah, I look forward to whoever would take the initiative on something such as that program. But from from the organization perspective, we're reaching out, and the community will need to develop such a program.
Yeah, just to quickly add to that point, one of the DAO that's going to exist with Manna, and basically any of the centralized community funds are for the most part going to be derived from community basically donating Manna to this DAO and creating, you know, the value to then be distributed. So it's really going to depend on, are there people out there who are going to want to donate some percentage of the Manna they receive towards this development and growth, and then hopefully start to create these ambassador programs. I think it's a really good idea, and again, like something ideally we can do from the ground level up in terms of the funding of it be community driven, the organization of it be community driven, and then having those ambassadors be receiving it too. So I think it's certainly possible, and very much like something we'd like to see, but not something that will be totally centrally organized. It's something I think we're really going to try to organically have it grow.
Yep. Can you explain in more detail the governance plans for Manna 2.0? I think from the one a day and one unique, like that's a set in stone type tokenomics at this current phase for sure. I think the governance is more so applicable to the DAO, and yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to go into that plan that is just not developed yet.
Brandon, I'll give one example that you know the group should decide is like what level of verification should be required for Manna.
Mm-hmm.
That's something super important and will change over time, and it's the community that should decide how does the community want to regulate that, because we definitely want to get it in the hands of as many possible people as we can, but only to the extent that we're not getting badly civil attacked. What will make this important and useful and valuable is that it's actually getting one a day to people, not to a bunch of bots. So one of the important things that we'll decide is what is that expectation for verification.
Yep. Well, we're going, yeah, I'm going to try to button up in 5 minutes here, but we won't get to some of these. There's some repeats. Is there a testing program? If so, I'm interested. I get Bright ID and come to a verification party and get the ED on ID chain. So that's where I would suggest to test some of this.
Yeah, anyone that wants to check that out, please do get connected to Bright ID from one of the parties, try that, and then get set up on ID chain. That's the best thing anyone can do from a testing phase right now.
Yeah. Can you send out a note telling us the sign up? Yeah, so we'll have more details on all of that coming out. And as we close up, we have an idea to have more community interaction, because I think some communication's lost in written form, and having verbal communication is important. And Bright ID has these weekly AMAs with different community hosting it, and they've had some really positive feedback from those. So what happens to Manna 1.0 and Grant Coin? We talked about that. Did you plan to use a faster blockchain, for example, Solana, Waves, Neo? Man, we've spent a lot of time discussions on this one.
Well, ID chain, I mean, if we're talking about speed, ID chain gives you all the
Yeah,
speed you need. So
exactly.
it's good.
Yeah,
It's nice to have a really fast blockchain.
yeah. So
It's fast, it's free, and as a side chain running an EVM title, so Ethereum virtual machine. So the vast majority of innovation happening in the blockchain space is on Ethereum and its side chains and L2s. We want to harness that. So thousands and thousands of brilliant developers all over the world are building cool stuff every day. And because we're EVM compatible, all the awesome stuff that they build can be brought over to ID chain as it comes. So we want to be next to this technological innovation, but we can't actually be on main chain Ethereum because it's way too expensive at this stage. They're working on layer 2s that could do amazing things for scalability on main chain, but they are not ready today. And we want to get going on Manna. So
yep.
Close to the innovation, but not on mainnet.
Yep. Yeah, so we battled and looked into many different options, and the ID chain is very compelling. So I'm very excited about how this is going to unfold. Is it possible to determine my old Manabase balance before the launch of Manna 2.0? Yeah, like I said, an email associated to it, a balance. So the email you use to log in is associated to a balance. Is Manna 2.0 distribution based on proof of work or proof of stake, since you partnered with ID blockchain?
Yeah, so the way it works, and the reason why it can be so fast is that the server nodes that validate blocks are run by people who are Bright ID verified and come from a pool of elected validators that are elected through Bright ID representative elections. So the apps that you use, including Manna, get a certain number of votes that they get to use to choose validators. Right now, our validator pool is so small that it's pretty much anyone who wants to be a validator and knows how to do it securely and run a node gets to do it. But in the future, it will be the apps like Manna, and by extension, their users that get to pick this validator pool. And because the people that are running the validator nodes are elected, they're known from the community, they have a reputation, and like they're good actors, good citizens, it's able to get a very fast consensus on the state of the blockchain. And so that's how it's able to be fast and cheap and not use proof of work or proof of stake. Actually, it's something called proof of authority, which basically means that yes, there is trust involved, but it's kind of like a decentralized elected trust. So everyone, this huge base of users that use Bright ID get to be a part of this process of deciding who gets to run the consensus on ID chain. So
I would say in a super simple way, proof of work is protected by energy. Proof
Yep.
of stake is protected by money, and ID chain is protected by people.
Very, very well put. Very succinctly put. Thank you for. Yep. So
Cool.
all of us are protecting it and making it run securely.
All right, so we asked that one. We're coming near the end. Will there be a process for organizations that own Manna 1 to claim the Manna 2? Since BreadID is designed as a verification mechanism for individuals, there would need to be different method for organizations. Yeah, this is a good point. I actually gave a lot of my Manna to like a church and a few nonprofits locally. So what I'm gonna refer them is the treasurer, the executive director, to go through the process, and then they're held to them, and then they'll have to push it over to the organization at some point. So that would be the cleanest path for those situations.
Yeah, I would say, right, if anyone, organization is in that standpoint, come to us and we'll help you do it. Right, in the future going forward, organizations would not be eligible to claim one a day, but in terms of these old claims, we'll help that get done.
Yeah. Recently there are a lot of BSC tokens, Binance chain. It'd be a shame not to join the BSC Binance chain. I'm definitely not into that. But if a community member wants to port or bridge over,
Well,
so
that's
be it. Like,
yeah. I mean, that's the nice
what
thing
you-
about Ethereum. Ethereum enabled side chains like BSC is, if that's your thing, if you like BSC, you can create a bridge from BSC to ID chain and bridge any tokens you want back and forth between the two.
Mhm.
Should be easy to do.
The two chains use similar enough language
Yep.
that they can be assets can be bridged over. We're not
Yep.
going to be bridging between that. I can certainly imagine us, building bridges to mainnet Ethereum,
Mhm.
but probably not out to others. Maybe
Yeah. So at the beginning, when the Manna economy and community should be able to thrive just on ID chain, but it's certainly, as there's more demand for the Manna token, it will just naturally branch out to these other chains, and because the technology is very similar, porting it over shouldn't be a problem.
Cool. This person's on it. I have followed the steps and connected BreadID verified and ID chain to MetaMask. Is this all I need to get the daily token deposited?
That's more than you need to do. This
Like,
person's really on it.
what?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just get it going. I love it.
Yeah, I think you won't even need, I could be wrong, but I think you won't even need MetaMask, right? I think it'll just be done through the browser, the Manna distribution. But yeah, I mean, he's ahead of the game, or he or she is ahead of the game, because she's already got her Manabase set up. So yeah, she can
waiting
start
on us.
she can start transferring as soon as she gets the Manna, she can put it in all the fancy apps that you can do with the blockchain. So that's pretty cool.
Cool. Just a few more, and then yeah, so if only verified humans can register for ID chain, will exchanges have the possibility to create Manna 2.0 wallets?
No problem. So anybody can have as many ID chain accounts and wallets as they want. Just like Ethereum, you can have as many as you want. Your one a day Manna is only going to get deposited into a single account. But anybody, any organization, if you want to have 500 accounts, go right ahead. You're only going to get one Manna, but you're welcome to spread that through as many accounts. So exchanges can have any accounts they want. Businesses can have any accounts they want. None of that's a limitation.
Yep. Cool. And what happened to the UBI? Good question. we're trying to make it happen. So yeah, we hope to keep pushing this forward and making a free market UBI. The trajectory and the intersection of both of these concepts are really taking form to not just us, I would say, kind of crazy minds of like kind of pushing this forward, but the average people in mainstream are coming up to these ideas, and there's some big problems ahead for societies and monetary policies that I think something like this should exist, and that's why we're trying it. So yeah, I think this one we should yeah, so I really appreciate all the questions here, and everyone's feedback, and I know it's been a long process for this whole endeavor, and the people that have been patiently waiting to see this evolve, like, thank you. Um, this has been a really challenging undertaking. Uh, really cool stories are forming that I hope can be shared once we have time to like share them, because just how the whole Bright ID Manna ecosystem from Swift demand and all that from the open UBI like is just really cool how organically all this has developed. So yeah, and like we said, we would love to have a community kind of people coming to the AMAs that Bright ID is doing on Thursdays. So I think what we'll do is set up a time and a link in the email with the link from this AMA, and would love to actually talk to a lot of you kind of face to face, and not get that miscommunication from written form, and that we can get into to kind of video conference form. So is there any closing remarks that y'all would like to say to the community here?
Oh, yeah, come join us in a in-person, well, I guess not in person, in a live AMA where we'll answer your questions live. So that'll be the next one. So this is not the last one.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for your time, and really appreciate all the hard work. And yeah, I'm really grateful for us to be so connected to Bright ID, and hopefully we can push all this forward and make some impact in people's lives. Because yeah, there's a dark trajectory and a very bright ID trajectory that we're aiming for. So, all right, y'all have a good one, and I got to get going here. Take care, everybody.
Hi, folks.
Bye.
Bye.